I only have a few weeks before I need to start a major revision, so now I need to figure out what on earth I need to do. Hi, I'm Madeline James, and today we are going to be doing, well, the next week or two we are going to be doing revisions. So I've started my read-through for my Magic Forged project. I have a lot of developmental stuff that I need to fix for it. So I need to finish my outline. I need to go through all of the feedback I've gotten from my critique partners who have only read like halfway through or almost halfway. And then I need to figure out how I want to fix everything. So if you saw some of my last videos where I was working on, I guess, the outline of my craft potion project, I had all my sticky notes up on the board and then I was moving them into my notebook. And I've thought about doing it, but the problem is I need a different structure than what I have there, that's basically just a bunch of individual ideas on sticky notes that I have like just like stacked together. But there's not a lot of like uniform space where I can like a table format, you know what I mean? Like if that was a table way of doing it, every scene was a column and every row was just a random note, but those rows didn't correlate to each other at all, if that makes sense. So it was like the first column was just what the scene number was, and then, the first row was what the scene was, and then the second row was just a list of random notes, right? I need to organize a lot of stuff in this where I need like a lot of rows, and I don't think I can do that on the board. I need to think about it. But because I need to track a bunch of different plot lines, a bunch of different things, and I just need to be able to see them all sort of together. So what I had for my last outline, and this is sort of the structure that I end up having in my final outline phases, is that I have like individual pages. So like this is one of the scene pages that I had for when I was drafting, right? So this is what I wrote to, is all of this. And that works because when I'm writing, I only need to see one thing at a time, right? And I want to see that in as much detail as possible. But when I'm still figuring out that developmental stuff, I kind of need to see everything and figure it out together. And I had thought that using like Plotter would work for this, but I'm really realizing that I don't like using digital software tools like that. They don't work for my brain when I'm in that thinking creative phase. So I have two options. Either one, I can figure out maybe it will work to do it on that board and I can actually draw like tables on it and do like that and then put things on sticky notes and move them around between the tables. That might actually work. At least as like an intro or initial like brainstormy phase. The other option I have is I have a bunch of index cards. And my thought with this is I can sort of lay them out, like whichever ones I need to look at a time. And I can have on one side all the stuff that's currently in there, like this is which scene number it is, this is kind of a high level what's happening, this is the setting, these are the characters, and like if any of these side plots that I need to progress or need to be thinking about are on there, I can write that. And then the other side can just be where I put things I want to add, like things in the revisions that I want to change about that scene, or I could make it X if I want to get rid of the scene, or like a note of, okay, these elements from this scene needs to go to scenes X, Y, and Z. If I put a new scene in, I would just have the new side. So I feel like that would work really well for revisions, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm so unsure about this process right now. I need to think about it. I need to look at how many scenes I have. So maybe if I figure that out, I can sort of figure out how much space I'd have up there, because I can write smaller on these than I can with the dry erase markers. But I could also use sticky notes up there, which I do love me some good sticky notes. So like maybe that would work. And then I just need to make a list of all the things I want to track, because I know there's at least 3 side characters whose arcs I really need to track and change and actually improve, because in my first draft, I focused on the main character, right? And her plot line and her internal arc, her external arc. And I have hints of the other characters, and as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, I set up this really cool thing, but like, because I thought of it when I was writing, and I hadn't actually figured out what that character arc was, right? Like, that's happening in the background and getting hints of, I never followed that through because it wasn't tracked. So I need to make all those notes and kind of add those on the board, either sticky notes or board, and just figure it all out. Yeah, so I need to make those lists, calculate out the number of rows, and figure out what I'm going to do for this. Okay, so I've gone through all the scenes and at least written the top part, and I came up with a format for the note cards, so let's see if you can see this. I essentially have up here the act number, the scene number, and then a scene description, just so that I can sort of have all the cards stacked and I can still tell what they're about at a glance. And then I added here is going to be like a bunch of description of things that are going on in the scene that I might want to, like, as I'm looking at it at a high level, that I'll want to be able to see and remember. So like special details, stuff like that. Or if I want to get rid of the scene, I need to know what important like bits are in there that I'm going to need to put somewhere else. And then I put little like color-coded bits of like scenes or arcs or mysteries that I'm tracking. So like this is for series related, like magic system backstory reveal plotline, if that makes sense. This green color is the friendship with one of the characters. This is a villain subplot. This one is a subplot of like her family. So it's like all that kind of stuff. And then I left enough room on this side to put various sticky notes and stuff of things that need to change. And so far, I think this is going to work out well. I've started to do some of the notes for some of them, but if you can see, I cleared off my board for now, and I'm going to try to put all these note cards up there so that I can see all of them. And I'm going to write like the left side, all of this first, and then put it up there. So I don't know if you can really tell, but I did the first row. That's basically Act 1. Which is the shortest act. It's only 10 scenes and they're all really basic scenes, whereas a lot of the other acts have... A lot of the scenes are actually really 3 scenes, so Act 1 is there, and then I'm trying to figure out how many rows I can have and see if I can actually split them out by like sequence to put them up there. And then my hope is I can look at it, and as I'm going through and making notes, I can write things on sticky notes and just stick them up where they need to go. Or like keep the sticky notes to the side, and then as I figure it out, I can add them in there. But that's sort of what I'm doing right now. And it's, I don't know if it's helping yet, but we'll see. Okay, so I've been making a lot of notes, doing a lot of the like world building to-do list things that I still needed to sort of put together, and I've gotten far enough that I think I need to start working on the new outline, and I think I need to just have references of like the high level things I need to interweave in here, like have a note for, you know, this character's impression of this person, right? Which, like, I probably need to mention in, like, 5 or 6 scenes really lightly. But I'm just getting very overwhelmed right now, trying to think about all this disparate information. And it's just, I'm getting lost a little bit in all of this. So I think I just need to really start pulling it together in a new outline, and then as I think of new things, I can just do it in there. Not that I don't want to put it in like my story Bible and stuff like that too. I do, but I think I need to do it in the context of where it's going to show up in the book a little bit more. I got some of the high level stuff done, but now I think that's where I need to be with this. And so I have, not decided how I want to structure that. I don't know if I want to do... I don't know. I've decided I don't want to do it on the existing note cards to an extent. Maybe I do. Maybe I need to create... Because there's going to be some that are new scenes that I need to put together. I need to change the structure of the beginning of it, and I need to do some thoughts about the high level structure here, but I know I need to change the beginning and the sequencing at the beginning. And I think the major change I'm going to make to make that work is to have my main character have already met one of the like soldiers or gang members, whatever, before, and she just doesn't realize it's him at first, which still gives me that moment of confusion and that scene setup that I have, but it changes the dynamics of it all, and it will let me bring in some things in a slightly more interesting way. I do slightly worry that it'll give things away a little bit, but I think that's okay. I think that's okay because I want people to root for what's going to happen. I want them to just doubt it, right? I want them to feel like, okay, like, I feel like this is what we're leading to, right? And that's the promise I'm making, right? Like, if I make it so completely up in the air, people are going to choose sides, right? They're going to be like, I want this to actually be the person that's the villain versus I want this person to be the villain. And if they can't figure it out at all, if there's no promises made in the story at all, then they might be disappointed if it's not the way they wanted it to go or the way they thought it was going to go, So that's kind of my thinking there. So I can make it have that one character come into play earlier, show some sides of their personality earlier to sort of start layering that in. And so I think that'll still work out well. So I need to restructure the beginning and think about that. And then I feel like I need more room than is on the note card. But I might just add additional notes to the back of the note cards, and I don't know, maybe I'll like staple them together or something. I don't know. Or like I have paper clips, so I could use paper clips to paperclip them together. I'm not entirely sure, but I know I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more scenes that I want to add. And I don't necessarily want to remove any, so it's kind of rough. Well, I guess at the beginning some will get removed, but I think a lot of them are going to get shortened a little bit, condensed up a bit, and then hopefully after this draft, some of it will be just like, I don't know, I'll try and think about it as I'm pulling this together and think about, is this really necessary? But yes, let me work on putting that together. My kids are being loud, sorry. Okay, I wanted to give a really quick update before my daughter comes up here to watch Frozen. I have her all set up with a blanket and stuff that she's gonna listen to up here while my husband does Legos with my son, and then I work on this a little bit. But I'm playing around in Canva right now, and I think what I'm going to do is create sort of like templates like I had before in my first draft. Like, this was what my scene outline looked like. And I'm going to make a new version of that. And I even started like working on pulling this stuff together into new scenes, but it's just, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. So I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to put it on my tablet as a PDF. And the other thing I'm going to try doing is I'm going to pull up, I think I'm going to have an outline page for the start of each arc and each major sequence as well, so that if I want to have any higher level notes, I can look at that and play around with it there. Like if I'm not sure exactly which scene something needs to go into, or even if just figuring that out beforehand will help me figure out like the individual scene stuff. So we'll see with that. I have started with what the scenes will look like, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently than I did before, which was to have the like action reaction beats, like all the different ones. And I'm instead going something a little bit more in the vein of like the scene structure. Did I get this from Story by Robert McKee? I can't remember, but I covered it in my structure video, and it's in my structure cheat sheets. But I'm going to start with the stimuli, right? Which is either something external happens and we have to react to it, or the character wants something, right? And then the goal, which is either reacting to that stimuli of like, okay, well, this is my goal, this is how I'm going to go about it, versus this happened and this is my goal for, responding to it or keeping something bad from happening or whatever, right? Conflict, and then an optional change goal, which they call like a stakes turn, or a stakes flip, which makes no sense to me. It has to do with like the positive, negative charge. I don't know. That's all kind of mumbo jumbo to me, honestly. But it looks like there could be some introspection and then a goal change, right? So I put a little section for that in here. And then I also have the gap/turn, which is essentially the result. And it's not like they're going to try to do something and everything is going to work out exactly the way they expected. No scene should go like that, probably, unless it's like, that's the point, and then it's like, why is everything going the way I want it to? But that could either be something surprising happened, or they learned new information, or they failed instead of succeeded, or they succeeded instead of failed. I don't know. But I have that there, and then I have 3 little sections at the bottom. One which is just like world building, so I can put things that I want to add there from a world building perspective, and I have arcs. So things that aren't necessarily in the scene but might get hinted to of what other characters in their arcs are doing. And then a notes section. And I think this is going to work out for the scenes. And I've already like duplicate like 50 times. But I want to go back and then make arc ones act ones and sequence ones. And I think the act ones will have just like a high level, this is sort of what's the main beats in the act are, and then I can have a notes place, and then maybe what's going on like in the subplots that are external. So like, what is our villain doing? What is this side character doing? What is her home post doing like during this time sequence? And I'm not sure if acts is the best like granularity to do that in, or if it would be in the sequences, because I feel like the sequences would just have little notes of what they're doing and not the actual change. But I feel like that would be really helpful. And now I'm also wondering if I should like have it all set up to be chronological, or if I should have all the acts, all the sequences, all the scenes. I think I'm going to start with that because I can always reorganize it pretty easily. And I'm also hoping that if I do this on the tablet, I can always take it back off the tablet and I can use it like, I could have that up here with my, Scrivener open in the other one. So let me work on, I have scene set up. I'm going to set up the act ones and the sequence ones and then prep the PDF. I don't know if I'm going to do like links, because in theory, there's a way to do like hyperlinked stuff within a PDF, which could be nice, right? But I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I can't do that in Canva, I don't think. But I'll Google it. And if it looks really easy to do in like Adobe Acrobat or something, I'll try adding it. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so real quick, since my kid's movie is over, I have set up this to put on my tablet and create the new outline. And I'm not going to put everything in here for everything. Like if it's already fine in the existing scene, then I'm not going to do anything for it. This is mostly to focus on changes, tightening up the arcs of scenes and sequences and stuff and all of that. So I have all the individual acts marked here. So I have Act 1 with the pieces and the plots I want, all of that. I have the sequences, and these link to the sequences, so I can kind of jot out like how those play a part within the higher, I guess, act. Act 2 sequences, yada, yada, yada. Let's get down to the sequences. So within each sequence, it links back to the act, and then I have each of the individual scenes linked within that sequence, and I'll add like notes up here of like what they're doing so I can think about how those scenes interact with the sequence as a whole. Notes on the sequence, changes, notes, stuff like that. And I did that for each sequence. So scroll. And then each scene, I have a link back to the act, the sequence, a spot for the beat, the setting, the source. So this is like the source scene. So like, and I made little like notes too. I don't know if you could see this. But this is essentially showing me on the side which original scenes this comes from. I think that was still blurry, but you get the idea. So I can say like, oh, this new scene, which is scene 1, is actually the previous draft scene 5, if that makes sense. And then I have all the initial bits in here, places to add things or expand things. And I did this for every scene and the whole thing, and it links around, and I'm hoping that's going to work. So I'm going to export that and get it on my tablet, make sure it's working, and then I can start working through here, and I'll have places that I can work on, like adding more notes and expanding things, and I can add pages to this, I think, on the tablet, and it won't break the links, I think. So I'm going to play around with that real quick. But I think while this did take me like 2 or 3 hours to put together, I'm hoping it helps. It's working in my brain at least for a way to take another step forward, and this should be easier to work off of for drafting. So we'll see. Okay, I think this worked pretty well. I can see it all in here. I can switch between pages. Oop. Oop. And let's see. Oh yeah. There we go. I have to click it right. I need to get used to like how the interface of this works a little bit more, but I think this is good. I think this is gonna work. And yeah, so now I just need to start expanding and moving into here, and I think that'll work out well. Okay, so another update. I've gone through and I've gotten a lot of the scenes and acts and sequences at least initially put in here, so I have like a lot of pages like this, and something that I did at this stage is I sort of highlighted all the scenes based off how significant I think the change is going to be. And there's a couple places where I'm like, I might need a scene here if there are certain details that I can't end up working into existing ones. But I wrote it all out by act, and this new draft should have roughly 82 scenes, which is a lot more than this, but I also broke up a lot of scenes that kind of had like multiple small scenes in it, and I split those up separately. So it is some new scenes, but I don't think the word count should be that much higher. So of those 82 total scenes, 17 are new, so brand new scenes or complete rework. So like I might be reusing information from a bunch of scenes, but it's entirely new. 12 are pretty significant rewrites where it's the same scene structure, but I just have to change a lot of the information in it. And then 53 should be either exactly the same or just have minor changes, and that's about 65% of it. So 65% of the new draft should be pretty much the same, just tweaked, added more details, clean up a couple notes, add a couple things here or there, and then the rest will be pretty significant changes. I can't tell if that's more or less work than I thought it was going to be, but I'm pretty happy with this so far. I feel like there's plenty of things that I could change more, but I can't think of a reason to do it. And so at this point, I think my goal is to fix everything I know how to fix and that I know is a problem. And then the stuff that I'm like, this might be okay, that's sort of where you need outside opinions on. So I'm pretty happy with this. I need to go through now, and where are my notes? Okay. I think at this point I'm going to start moving this into the scene note cards, and I'm going to go check on my kids. Okay, so I've spent most of the day continuing to work on moving all of these scene cards into my, I guess, new outline. Oh my gosh, it's been a lot of work, but I'm on my 3rd snow day in a row being home with the kids, which has been, pretty good. My daughter's back in daycare today, which is nice because she requires a lot more effort. That sounds horrible, but my son is very independent. His favorite thing in the world to do is just to work on his stuff by himself. He does occasionally want, like, you to come interact with him and do stuff, but, like, it's really easy to come up here and spend a few hours up here while he's doing his own stuff downstairs, and he'll check in and, you know. But yeah, so I got a bunch done. I've gone through Act 1 and 2, which is a lot. I already have a few places where I've added scenes and I don't really want to go back and fix the numbering, which is fine. I'm imagining after this draft, I will want to put it into chapters. Which is interesting. It's definitely interesting. I need to actually do chapters. The last book that I finished, I didn't really worry about chapters too much because it was different POVs and I wanted to have different chapters and different POVs. At least, like, I assumed at some point, like, an editor would have me change that, but I queried it with it just every scene being a different POV. So this one I need to actually have dramatic scene breaks, which is going to be interesting to think about as I'm rewriting it. But anyway, gone through these, took all morning. I'm going to go and get lunch together. Probably not going to work on this anymore today. I have a lot going on. My daughter has gymnastics when she gets back, and then I have a conlanging stream tonight, which I need to redo some of the structure there. I got some amazing feedback from a wonderful conlanger. I'm sure I'll talk about it at some point, but she's amazing. She's wonderful and gave me some really great feedback that I want to, you know, utilize. See how that goes. But yeah, I will check in later and hopefully I can get through all of this. I also have a couple notes of really important things I want to work on. I want to expand the like group that the main character gets put into when she's in like the gang. Because I haven't really fleshed out any of those characters, and now a lot of the scenes I'm adding are scenes that will be interacting with those characters, so I want to flesh that out, flesh out some of the dynamics of how the gang, military structure, whatever works, like all of that kind of stuff. So that's all kind of working around in here, and I'm kind of adding notes as I go through, just like I expected, which is good. And I think I'm doing good with my timeline and my progress, and all of that. So yeah, I'll check in later. Okay, so I've been continuing working through the outline. I've gotten all of the note cards, which are this big stack right here. All of this is now documented in those outline pages, and I expanded down all of the new scenes, right? So I've done all of that. That's done. So now I just need to continue working in the other, like, additional bigger world building things that I need to do. So one of those is being the, like, military structure. And then one of those is being the, her team that she works with in the gang. I need to expand that. And then I think that's the main, like, world building things. And then, oh gosh, it's morning here. I have my annual, like, big blood work appointment, so I am leaving in, like, 45 minutes to an hour, so I have a little bit of time that it wasn't worth me going to work and then turning around and leaving, so it's morning, and I don't function super great with talking to people in the morning. But what I decided to do is I outlined high level book 2. And I had always sort of like, I don't know, I think because this project was really put together for the goal of being like trad queried, that I like just really locked myself in a lot with that idea, right? Like I've been really, really focusing on keeping it under word count. I've been really, really focusing on keeping it a standalone with maybe some series potential, right? And I've just kind of realized that because I wasn't allowing myself to think about later books and the ways that things I was working on could be expanded and depth could be added to it, they didn't feel like they had that depth, and I didn't like there's just stuff like that like as I've been thinking about if I get to write a book 2, or if I decide to just write a book 2, what would that look like? And all the ideas I have really involve like expanding on like some of the world building and the mythology part of it. And so I'm like, okay, I just need to figure this out and I need to do it. So I came up and I'm looking down because I have it like on my little tablet thing here. But I wrote out like a timeline of what I think would happen. But I want to like sort of share this process with you because I have never done this before where I've written a book and then I'm like, okay, how can I expand it? Right? Like the time before where I had written the Roar of Whispers series, which I queried, I had planned that whole thing out at once, right? Like that story was a trilogy from conception. So this was like kind of weird for me. So what I did is I wrote a bunch of like sections. And so the first place I started was just writing where the book 1 ends right now. So like, what is the state of the like organizational's like political situation? Like, what is the family's situation? What are each of my main characters' situation? Like, what have they accomplished? Where are they? And what have I already written in for like talking about what comes next? And then I wrote a bunch of questions. Which questions would like the reader and, you know, me, because I haven't finished, like I haven't planned it out, but like, what are the questions the reader would still have after book 1? Like, what are the things they'd worry about? And so I made that list of things because I don't know, there's just so many directions that you can go for a book 2. Like, I've been sitting here and I'm like, I could take this up a notch and really go into like global catastrophe level stakes. I could, you know, make this a lot more like really personally bring in like the mythology part of it and these other entities that I won't talk about and make that like a really big focus, or I could like have it be really political, right? And so I had to sit down and think about like, okay, if someone read book 1 and they enjoyed book 1, what are the things about book 1 that they like that I should continue on? And a lot of that I think is like the scale of it and the focus, because book 1 is really about her relationship with her family's situation, and then gets into like their local like military gang and this situation there. And like you care about this small group, about this family, about this post. Like you're not caring about like even like regional level scale or anything like that. Like it's just, it doesn't really matter in the book. And so I think really expanding it out a lot would kind of lose a lot of that personal connection with all those characters. So I'm like, okay, no, we need to keep it small scale, in terms of like, I don't want to say like in terms of the stakes, because like I'm still increasing the stakes, but I'm keeping the focus small, if that makes sense. So like the thing that is going to happen, I think, in book 2 is going to be pretty catastrophic at a like continental level probably, but we're only focusing on the effects and the like getting through it of like one small part of, you know, like basically her part. It grows a little bit, but like that's kind of it, right? So that took some like finagling and then trying to think about what questions people would have and how can I answer those in a way that would be like exciting and satisfying. And then I was also thinking about what questions I could introduce that like maybe sometime down the road I could have like another series that's set in the same world as the same things are happening, but with different sets of characters. And so the way I really was thinking about how to interweave the like large scale external conflict was with only showing a small aspect of it. And then like I could show other aspects of it in other series, like connected series later if I wanted to. So I was thinking about that. And then I also wrote a list of cookies. And this is something, let me look it up on my phone, but there's an author newsletter that I follow. I want to say it's something like Misfits and Dreamers or something like that, like along those lines. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, Susan Dennard. She was sharing in one of her newsletters that's called like Misfits and Daydreamers about her like outlining process. And one of the things she does is for scenes is she has cookies. And those cookies are like those things you're really excited to read and to write. And it's not her invention. She got that concept from someone else. I don't remember who though. But, and then every single scene should have a cookie, right? And I really like that idea of like, you shouldn't just write a scene because it has to be there. Like, you should find a way to make it really like satisfying. And or like change it so that it can be satisfying, or change it so that you don't need it, you know what I mean? So I was like thinking about that, and I'm like, okay, what are the cookies that we would have going into book 2? Like, what are the things that, you know, people will be really excited to see? And so I have like my new characters that have sort of come together at the end of book 1, them having to really fight for each other, right? Like that, now that they've both kind of acknowledged that they actually want to be with each other and that they both want to like fight for each other, okay, now prove it, right? And have that be really tested, and have a lot of that longing and those moments of like, but will they be able to like succeed, you know? So like I was like, okay, that would be really satisfying. That would be really fun for me to write, fun to read. The mystery of the beasts that patrol the world and like have basically caused this like apocalyptic scenario. Like, there's a lot of questions about them, and there's a lot of things that I did hint at in book 1, not knowing where it was gonna go, but about like things progressing and them getting like smarter and stuff like that. So I want to take that and carry it through and answer some of those questions. And then Irina and her sisters. I want that to be a really big part of book 2, because all of book 1 is like her being separate from them, and then she finally realizes that like they figure out a way to sort of come back together. And so now for book 2, like I feel like that'd be really satisfying to, after reading about all of this pain and the suffering and the mourning and the loss, to then turn that around and have really deep, emotionally satisfying bonding between the sisters. And also showing some of the like, you know, awkwardness and the like trying to get used to each other again, right? And then I have a couple things about like stakes increasing. There's a couple little side things that could be addressed, but like I feel like don't necessarily need to be. And just like, you know, there's a longer list. But so I was going through and doing all that, and what I ended up with was my high-level outline, which sort of tells me where things are going to go. And it gave me a few notes of things that I need to hint about in this first book. And also a few changes about how I want the story to end, because I really ended things in a like, yes, there was that potential for the future, which was basically like, okay, well, but what about the beasts, right? Like, what do we do about them now? Like, we've temporarily solved the problem, but how do we really solve the problem? And so I've decided to change a few of the ways that the relationships end, because I sort of left the relationship with her sisters being very like, they have this cute little perfect scene of them like being perfect little sisters, right? And that's like, it's satisfying. Like when I read it back, I was like, oh my God, you know? But if I want to have that be a thing in book 2, I think I'm going to change that to have it be more hopeful and awkward, you know? So that carries into book 2 of like, there can be some conflict between them, and like there is still pain and there is still resentment in those relationships that need to be dealt with. So I'm sort of leaving it in a place where like that feels more natural to come off of it. And then I'm changing the romantic conclusion in book 1, because I left it somewhere that was very like, this is all gonna work out perfectly now, right? And now I need it to be like, oh shoot, like, is it gonna work out? Is this gonna work out? I don't think it's gonna work. How are they gonna do that, right? So I've added some notes that I like, that is gonna change the like denouement. How do you pronounce that? The denouncement? The denouement. I don't know. I can't speak French or anything French at all. I think it's French. Ignore me. But yeah, so I have that figured out, and now I'm gonna work those notes into book 1, because I know that trad querying wants everything to be a standalone, but this is still like, I feel like what it's gonna do is just add a lot of depth, and it can still be tweaked to be obviously a standalone, right? And it could have less like, there has to be an exact follow-on. You know what I mean? Like I could write, with the way I have this ending, I could write another book from a different character's POV, like, right? I'm not planning on it, but like if say book 1 did well and they're like, okay, well let's do another standalone. Like I could sort of do it there, you know? So I have options. But also this is like, oh, that's the other thing I need to figure out, because I'm carrying forward with the sort of mythology of it. And mythology is the wrong word, but that's because it's not myth after book 1, or even part of the way, like, you get what I'm saying, right? So that is actually something that matters now that I'm like thinking about and figuring out for book 2. So now I need to really deepen the like religious lore and the myths that the people believe and talk about and start laying all of that groundwork out, because it's going to matter in book 2. And just doing that is going to make it feel so much cooler and more deep, and like all the world building stuff for this second big revision are like that. Like really making the military gang make sense, making it really feel like it came from an actual military organization, having it make sense for how the magic system works, and having it make sense for like how things would have changed. And like I feel like that's just going to add a lot of uniqueness and depth and texture to the world and to the interactions with all the people, and make it feel less like, I mean this in a nice way, but like less like YA dystopian like organization, right? Like thinking about like Divergent, right? That little organization they're in is so like, it's not the focus, but it's like not very well like developed in terms of like the detail of it. Like it's just like, okay, they're training and they're doing stuff, and like you don't really get to see all the organization of it and like the ranking of it, and like it just feels very informal to me. And so right now that's sort of how it is in my first book, and like having that like YA dystopian organization feel does not fit for what I'm writing, right? So it'll be a lot grittier, a lot more like it'll just have that more military feel to that parts of it. And then adding in all the like the religion and the lore and the like things that people believe, and adding more of those sayings about the sources of magic and how their world works, like weaving all that in is going to make it so much more deep and make it make so much more sense. And like I'm just very excited about all these changes, and I think they're going to really, really help. But yeah, that's what I have. That's my update for right now. I'm going to go through and add all those notes into the actual outline, and yes, then we're moving forward. Alright, so if you didn't notice earlier, the board is officially empty. It is ready for things to go up on it, and I have finished the revision guide. I still have some world building notes that I want to flesh out and put up here that I'm going to incorporate into the draft, but that's mostly going to be things like I'm going to redo my naming language. Right now I'm using like a Croatian, like really directly inspired Croatian inspiration, and I want to do something a little bit more unique. And also because there's a lot of meanings in those names that like I don't know as a, non-speaker, whatever. So I'm going to redo all of that this weekend on a live stream. We'll see how that goes. And I need to flesh out a few things, which I've already talked about, that I'm going to do later. But the actual outline, the changes itself are done. And I cannot tell you how awesome that feels. Like it feels really, really great. And I'm actually really excited to dive into these revisions. The changes at the very beginning of the book are going to be really fun to write, which is good because that'll get me into it. And I think, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about how I'm going to actually do this revision. I think I'm going to retype everything and track the word count, but I have a lot to get done in a short period of time if I want to meet my, albeit self-imposed deadlines, but I'd like to still meet them. But I'm really excited about accomplishing this, because I think you could tell at the beginning that I was really not feeling confident that I could figure out how to do all of this, and I couldn't see how it was going to come together, but I think we've gotten there, and I'm very excited about it. And so yeah, that's where I will leave you for this vlog. If you're working on stuff, diving into a new goal this year, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about how you plan these types of revisions down below, because I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.